We're gonna start, of course, with the Model 1 of the Neo Geo CD. Now, some technical specs about the Neo Geo CD. The Neo Geo CD, also like the Neo Geo MVS and the AES, all systems are 16-bit systems. The main processor of the Neo Geo CD is a 16-bit Motorola 68000, which runs on 12 MHz. Then an 8-bit coprocessor, a Zilog Z80, which runs on 4 MHz. Then it also has a Yamaha sound chip that provides 15 sound channels for the games. A resolution of 320 by 224, a maximum of 4096 colors on screen out of a color palette of 65,536 colors, a maximum of 380 sprites on screen at the same time, and a total of 56 megabits/7 megabytes of RAM. The system also has a single-speed CD-ROM drive. The Model 1 has a motorized front-loading CD tray. You can also play audio CDs on the system. The Neo Geo CD is also region-free, so there are no region locks. So you can play Japanese games and also the North American versions of the games, like the PAL games, on any system, but depending on the region of your system, the system and also all the games that you will play on this system will be in a specific language. So the Model 1 was only released in Japan, so this is the Japanese version. The startup menu will be in the Japanese language, and every game, also the North American versions or the PAL versions, will be in the Japanese language. You can change in many games the language in the options menu, but in the end the Japanese versions of all the games are actually the uncut versions of the games. Because in some, mostly in fighting games, it can happen that if you would play them on a North American console or a PAL console, that normally you would have red blood in those fighting games. But if you would play them on a North American console or a PAL console, then you would have maybe no blood at all, or the blood would be in a different color, so for instance in white or in green. But like I already said, it's not very common. It's in some fighting games, but not in many. The Neo Geo CD also has an internal memory for save games, because the system don't have the cartridge slot like the Neo Geo AES, but the memory is the same size, so in the end it has a 2 kilobit memory for the save games, same thing like the memory cards on the Neo Geo AES, but in the end, you can't share your save data with anyone else, so you can't copy it to another console or anything. And with 2 kilobits of memory, you can save between 19 to 27 save states for the games. And one other thing that the Neo Geo CD is missing compared to the Neo Geo AES is a headphone jack and a volume control for the headphone jack. Okay, but let's continue. On the Model 1 here on the left side you have the power button. If you turn on the system, then this power button will light orange. Then, like I said, here you have the motorized front-loading CD tray. Underneath you have 2 controller ports, player 1 and player 2. On the left and on the right side there's nothing very interesting or anything. Here on the back you have the composite ports, video and 2x audio, an S-video port, AV port, which you can basically use for an RGB cable, the port for the power supply, and here you have the serial number. And that's basically the Neo Geo CD Model 1. Here on the top you also have a little metal plaque of the Neo Geo logo, and it says Neo Geo CD Advanced Entertainment System. The design of the Model 1 is, it's pretty simple. It kind of reminds me of a table actually, like a small tea table, but I think, it's a very beautiful looking console, even though it has a simple look, but I think it's actually a very beautiful system. And when you start up the Neo Geo CD Model 1, you get a little Neo Geo intro, and the startup menu is basically it's basically a CD player, and also in the startup menu you have the button to open and close the CD tray, because there's no button on the system or on the console itself. And in the startup menu you can also manage your memory / your save data. And if you insert an audio CD, then yeah, you have also some functions like, for instance, repeat and random playlist or whatever. Okay, but now let's come to the Model 2. And here we have the Model 2. Technically it is the same console like the Neo Geo CD Model 1. The design has changed. Now it's not a front-loading system anymore, now it's a top-loading system. Spring-loaded. I miss one spring for this for this CD door. But anyways, here on the top on the left you have the power button, then here you have a little power LED which lights red. Also the controller ports for player 1 and player 2. Also on the sides there's nothing very interesting. Here on the back you have the big vents, and on the back of the system you also have your composite ports, video and 2x audio, S-video, AV out, the port for the power supply, and here's the serial number. Now the version that I have of the Model 2 is a PAL version, and in the end the only difference actually between a Japanese or a North American version compared to a PAL European version is that the video signal that is outputted by a PAL console runs on 50 Hz compared to the 60 Hz from NTSC video signal compared to the PAL video signal. And the Model 2 also has the same intro like the Model 1, the Neo Geo intro. And yeah, the only thing that the Model 2 misses compared to the Model 1 is that you don't have the button to open the CD tray in the startup menu. And since this is a PAL version, the language setting of this system is in English, so the European and the North American versions are both in the English language or set to the English language. Okay, and now to the last model, the Neo Geo CD-Z or CDC, like I mentioned it before or called it before. Yeah, the system, like I also mentioned before, is smaller, a lot smaller than the Model 1 and Model 2. The size of Model 1 and Model 2, you can compare it to the size of an original Xbox, but both systems are not as heavy. Actually, the Neo Geo CD Model 2 is a lot lighter than the Model 1, and the Neo Geo CD-Z, you can compare it size-wise to an original PlayStation 1. And yeah, it's also a top-loading system. So here on the right side you have the button to open the CD tray. Then this time the spindle has a lock function, so when you insert the CD you have to push it a little bit down, then the CD locks in. And if you remove the CD, then you have to push this blue button, and then you can take the CD out of the system. Then here on the left side you have the power button. Here you have a red LED, a power LED, which lights red, of course, when you turn on the system. Here on the front you have the controller ports for player 1 and player 2. Then also on the sides, nothing very interesting. Here on the back you also have the same ports, composite, S-video, AV, and the port for the power supply, and on the bottom here you have the serial number. And yeah, the Neo Geo CD, like I also mentioned before, has faster loading times. Now a lot of people think that this is because the Neo Geo CD has a double speed CD-ROM drive compared to Model 1 and Model 2, which only have a single speed CD-ROM drive, but this is actually not the case. The reason why it has faster loading times is because yeah, the system has more internal memory, but I can't really tell you how much more, because I haven't found any information about that on the internet. For most games you can actually say the loading times are half as long as the loading times on the Model 1 or Model 2. In other games it's about a third faster, or a couple of seconds faster than on the other systems. But the Neo Geo CD has a design flaw, and that is because it's so compact, everything is very close together, and you have here on the top, you have here the vents, and the vents are actually too small for the system. And since everything is, yeah, very close together, the system can create a lot of heat, and if you play the system for, let's say, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, yeah, it can happen that the system will shut down and in the end break the system, because it's all the heat would damage the main board of the system. So this was a design flaw, and yeah, it has happened before. I didn't play it that much since I have it. I actually try to play as less as I can on this system. If I play the Neo Geo CD games, I don't mind the loading times. I play them on the Model 1 or Model 2. But it's definitely also a very cool looking system. I also like the Model 2, but yeah, out of the three I like actually the Model 1 the best. The Neo Geo CD is my second favorite, and my third favorite is the Neo Geo CD Model 2. This console actually reminds me a little bit of Battlestar Galactica because of the Cylons, because of the red yeah, power light. When you turn on the system, it reminds me every time of the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica. And the Neo Geo CD was only released in Japan, so also this system is only in the Japanese language. And when you turn on the system, you have a different Neo Geo intro, and you also have a slightly different startup menu. This time they actually removed the repeat functions and the random functions for the CD player, but you can also yeah, manage your save data, and you can also play normal audio CDs or play your Neo Geo CD games on the system. Okay, next we're gonna take a closer look on the controls. And here we have the new designed Joypad controller that came with the Neo Geo CD. And for me, it is actually one of my favorite control pads of all time. It is super light, it is very comfortable to play with this Joypad controller, and what's really cool is the thumbstick. You can hear this, those are micro switches, and yeah, it's super accurate. It is, like I said, very comfortable, sorry. Yeah, then over here you have your action buttons A, B, C, D. It looks like a Super Nintendo controller, yes, design-wise, but it is a very cool and comfortable controller. But when the Neo Geo CD was released, a lot of people were actually disappointed that the Neo Geo CD came with this new controller, because they wanted to play the Neo Geo CD with the original AES arcade stick / controller, and again also this one has the micro switches for the joystick. And yeah, this is same let's call it same technology like in the arcades, because also the joysticks in the arcades used micro switches, and you also have all your 4 action buttons over here, A, B, C, D, then also start and select, same thing like on the Neo Geo CD controller. For the Neo Geo CD console, both controllers work. Of course, the Joypad controller that was released for the system, and also the AES controllers work on the system. And for me also, the AES controller is also one of my favorite controllers. And what's actually pretty cool about this is the closest thing that you could have got back then in 1990 or 91 when the AES was released to an arcade controller experience, because it's made like an arcade controller, and also all the buttons are arcade-like, and you have this big surface, so you can actually rest your hand on the arcade stick and use all the controls or all the buttons. And this was also a reason why another stick or another controller, which was also released from SNK, the Competition Pro controller, which actually was mentioned on the box of the controller as the Neo Geo CD controller and not the Neo Geo controller or anything. So it was an arcade stick for the Neo Geo CD. And this was kind of a redesign of the AES controller. In the end, it was an oval. The shape of the controller was kind of oval / round, and it was a little bit smaller than the AES controller. And yeah, also it had a slightly different design, and this was one of the reasons why not many people liked this Competition Pro controller, because it was a lot smaller, and in the end you couldn't rest your hand on the controller anymore. So you would have to rest your hand on the table and then reach out to the buttons, and this misses a little bit the arcade experience. One thing that I also wanted to show, which many people already know, when I first got this controller, I actually thought this was kind of normal, that the ball on the top has splitted, let's call it like that, or has a lot of cracks. Well, it's kind of normal and also not that normal. This is something that can happen over time with a lot of use of the arcade stick or of this controller, that the plastic inside will break / it will crack. But in the end, this doesn't affect the experience that you will have with this controller, or your gameplay or anything. You actually will not really feel those cracks if you play the stick. So this is just one thing that I wanted to mention. If you never had a Neo Geo, or you want to try to get into the Neo Geo consoles and all the hardware and everything, that this is very common, that those balls on the arcade stick are cracked. One thing that I also wanted to mention is that actually a couple things. I mentioned before that SNK also released the Competition Pro controller. Then they also released an extension cable for their controllers, because the cables are actually not that long. Then they also released in Japan a Mahjong controller, which was kind of like a keyboard controller in the end. And also other companies made controller for the Neo Geo AES, which also work on the Neo Geo CD, like for instance the company Hori made arcade sticks which also have some turbo functions down here, I guess, and then you can activate the turbo function just for pad A or / for button A or button B, or for all the buttons if you want to. And then another company which is called MAS, for Multi Arcade System, they released a controller called the Super Pro Stick, and this controller actually looks like the real controls from an MVS cabinet. So it looks like somebody cut out the controls of player 1 and soldered a controller cable on it so that you can connect it to the AES or the Neo Geo CD. It's a very cool controller. They come in different variations, color scheme wise, what I have seen on the internet. So you get the original red, white and black design. They also have blue, white and black, and I guess even some other colors. If you just Google Super Pro Stick and maybe MAS, M-A-S for the company, then you will find a lot of different versions of this controller. Actually looks also pretty cool. But the last thing that I wanted to mention, which is actually more important for this review, is that like you have already seen, the system, any of those three models that I've shown you, Model 1, Model 2 or the CDZ, they don't have a reset button. And if you wanna reset the game, you have two options. While playing the game, if you push A, B, C and select, then you get into the main menu of the game. So you can reset back to the main menu of the game. And if you push A, B, C and start all together, then you reset to the main menu of the system. But keep in mind, this doesn't work during loading times. During the loading times you can't reset, except you would turn off the system and turn it back on, or the console. But during the gameplay you can reset either to the main menu of the game or to the main menu of the system. Okay, this was enough for the controllers. Let's take a look at some of the games.